Good morning, everyone. It is February the 9th, and we've got a storm system to talk about in the West Coast. And the difference this time around is that we're now getting rain and snow in Oregon State, but also in California. And it's going to be kind of a double whammy. We have a storm system coming in not only during the day Sunday into Monday, like you guys have been experiencing the last 24 hours, but we also have a second system moving in during the day Tuesday. Let's say from about 10 a.m. through the rest of the day Tuesday into Wednesday. We're talking about heavy mountain snow for the Sierra Nevada, maybe an inch of rain for places around San Francisco Bay. But then after that, we've got another storm system that will be accompanying this trough that's propagating from places like California, east of the Rockies, and affecting the East Coast as we get towards Valentine's Day. So we got a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Well, guys, I want to start us off here looking at the forecast map Sunday. One thing that's actually clear to see, if we look at the 540 in terms of atmospheric height, this is the middle troposphere. You can see this blue line extending into parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan, Canada, and then pushing to the south and east to places like Georgia, South Carolina, areas like that. And this is showing where the ridge is really positioned as of Sunday morning. And we can see probably warm air rushing into the central plains here, as well as parts of the southeast. But along that boundary, right, between the cold and warm air, we do have the potential for storms to develop. And on Sunday afternoon, we did have a storm system, more like an atmospheric river, pushing into Oregon State. In fact, as early as Sunday morning, we saw heavy rainfall move on shore in Oregon State. And we even saw some heavy mountain snow right in the southern Cascades. And as we step this forward in time, as we get into, let's say, late Sunday, early Monday, we start to see snowfall in Idaho, western Montana, and parts of Wyoming. And that snowfall continued for the Intermountain West, especially the northern portions here in Wyoming and Montana. And a lot of this had to do with the development of a closed low in the state of Wyoming as we got into Monday morning. Now, as far as precipitation amounts for the Sunday to Monday storm system, see a broad area of half an inch of rain for much of Oregon State, back through northern California, and also into Idaho and parts of Wyoming and Montana. Now, this broad area is going to include snowfall, right? So if you live near the Cascades or let's say the intermountains of Idaho and Montana, and even around Yellowstone National Park, we're talking about close to a foot of snowfall with this event. When we look at snowfall totals through Monday night, we can see these pink regions in the Cascades and also the mountains of Idaho and even Wyoming. And these areas indicate the potential for over 1 foot of snowfall through Monday night. Now, as we get into Tuesday morning, we will have an area of snowfall over, let's say, Michigan and Wisconsin early Tuesday morning. And that will propagate off to the east into New York State, perhaps into, let's say, the rest of New England, including Maine, delivering a quick shot of snow. Again, we're talking about maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow for you guys that live there in the upper Midwest and New England. But this will be a quick moving system lasting just a few hours. We're talking maybe 3 to 6 hours for most of you, and then it will be out of here, right? It'll be moving off the coast. But as we get into Tuesday afternoon, we'll notice that snowfall move through New York State and through the rest of New England. And at the same time, we'll have a new storm system coming on shore in California. And this will be delivering moderate to even heavy rainfall to San Francisco and heavy snowfall to the Sierra Nevada. Again, we can kind of make out that storm system coming on shore here. And that will be a long duration event. We'll probably see a 24-hour period of snowfall for the Sierra Nevada. And then our second storm system that we're seeing here in the southern plains over Texas will be delivering mainly light rainfall to western Texas. As far as the timing of this storm system coming on shore for places like San Francisco Bay and even the rest of the Sierra Nevada here in California, we can see as early as 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning the rain beginning to come on shore. And as far as the rest of the timing here, we can see that Probably the heaviest precipitation arrives around noon on Tuesday, and this includes the mountains, right, of California here, where the rainfall rates and snowfall rates really pick up through early afternoon. And as far as the heaviest of the snow, that will probably continue through, let's say, Tuesday evening, and then we'll start to see it die down. We'll see perhaps lighter showers in San Francisco Bay, and lighter snow showers continue through the mountain passes as we get into Tuesday night and maybe early Wednesday morning. And as we push this forward in time, we can see that rain and snow shower activity continue for the Intermountain West well into the day Thursday. Through Thursday morning, we'll have a lot of beneficial rain for parts of California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And some of it, of course, will be in the form of snow. But one thing I want to point out here is that there are a lot of areas that will probably be receiving over an inch of precipitation. And that means the higher hills around San Francisco, especially as you move north of the city into Northern California. And all the way back here, of course, in the Sierra Nevada, there'll be some areas that pick up well over an inch of liquid equivalent precipitation. And you know what that means? That means you can probably see over a foot of snowfall in some places. In fact, when we're talking about snowfall, we see a lot of purple on this map, right? And wherever you see purple, it's generally 6 inches or greater in terms of snowfall. And we can see how we're having snowfall as far to the east here as western Colorado. So, a lot of beneficial snowfall to the high country here. We can even see some snowfall making it as far south as Flagstaff in Arizona. Gonna highlight that for you guys here on the map. But anywhere north of California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado on this map, uh, basically in Oregon up to Idaho, that region, all that snowfall that you're seeing in terms of accumulation on this map was from the previous storm. So just keep that in mind. Now, what's bringing all this wet weather and snowfall to the west? Well, we have a trough that's moving onshore in California. And with it, we have cooler temperatures. We have more precipitation at the front end of it. Now, as this propagates off to the east with time, that's going to have the potential to tap into some Gulf of Mexico moisture. So, pretty much any area here on the right quadrant of this trough will be fair game for the development of a low pressure and precipitation. This could provide the setup for a major snowstorm as we get into Valentine's Day and even into the 15th, so next Sunday. In fact, as we step this forward, we can see that trough begin to move to the east and begin to dive into the Gulf of Mexico. And as we get into Sunday, we can see the development of a low pressure system over Louisiana. And you can imagine anything to the north and west of that low pressure system will probably be in the form of wintry precipitation. And based on its current track, we could see that through parts of the Midwest, especially as you get into the Northeast, where we have cold enough air in place. Now, this is just one run of the European model. As we step this forward, we can see where the low pressure system is tracking into North Carolina, Virginia, that area. Now, the heaviest of the snowfall will likely be to the north and west of that low pressure system. Let's say from Ohio up into, let's say, Maine. And there will likely be areas in here that receive over a foot of snowfall. Perhaps as you get deeper into the Northeast, into, let's say, upstate New York, places like Syracuse, perhaps even as far south and west as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There could be a warm enough nose of air to change over to a wintry mix there, something we'll have to watch as we get towards the weekend. But places such as Boston could really win in this scenario, perhaps getting close to 18, 20 inches of snowfall if this particular model were to play out in this manner. I wanted to share this as well. We can see here towards the end of the run, this takes us into, let's say, late Monday night. We can see where the low pressure system has really bombed out. It's around 979 millibars. That's a very strong storm, so we'll likely see high wind gust near places like Boston and Providence, but also very heavy snowfall at this time. Now, I do want to take a look at the potential radar as we get into Friday next week. This will kind of show us the start or the development of that storm system associated with that trough moving over the Rockies. Now, the position of that trough over the Rockies will be pretty much right around here, diving into places like Arizona, New Mexico at this time. And with it, of course, we'll have precipitation and the development of a low pressure system, likely somewhere in the deep south. This particular model run is showing around the state of Texas. And where this low pressure system develops, and as we can see here over western Texas in this particular model run, will likely have a band of snowfall to the north and west of that. So this model is showing over the high country of New Mexico, perhaps even a rain snow mix in places like Albuquerque, changing to all snow as this system moves off to the east. And just to set the stage here, we can see this blue line to the east of that storm system. And that's indicating to us where the cold air is. This is called that line of 540, which is usually indicative of the rain snow boundary. So anywhere to the north of that line would be where the snow actually takes place. So pay attention to that as we step forward in time. So stepping this forward over time, we can see where the rain begins to overspread Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and much of the deep south, and snowfall continuing to the north and west of this low pressure system. Again, it's highly dependent on where it's actually positioned, but we can see heavy mountain snowfall in places like New Mexico. And beyond this point, we see where the rain continues to push off to the east and the redevelopment of a low pressure system over places like eastern Texas. Now, where does it go from here? That's the big question. There's two different pathways that it typically takes. It typically either goes on the western side of the Appalachians or on the eastern side of the Appalachians and redevelops off of the east coast somewhere. Now we can see where the rain moves into the cold air by Sunday morning over the mid Atlantic. And as it does so, we can see an area of freezing rain set up perhaps in the I 81 corridor through much of western Virginia. And the thing I want you to keep in mind here is that if we look to the north and east over New England, there is no high pressure system in place up here. And that's very important because we need a strong high pressure system typically in a setup like this to deliver cold air on the eastern side of the Appalachians to have a strong cold air damming event. So one of the big questions moving forward is, are we going to have enough cold air in place over the Northeast to have a major snowstorm and perhaps this icing event that could take place in the mid-Atlantic? Beyond Sunday into Monday, we can see where the potential exists for a very strong nor'easter to develop east of the Delmarva Peninsula and throw back some very heavy snowfall into the Northeast. And this snowfall, of course, continues into, let's say, early Tuesday morning for parts of Maine. Now, snowfall accumulations through Tuesday morning, we can see this large pink area here from Pennsylvania through New York State into parts of Maine. And this is for the potential for at least a foot or more of snowfall. And there's a bullseye here on the map right around Boston, Massachusetts, where some places could pick up almost 2 feet of snow. Now, just keep in mind this snowfall forecast goes into next Tuesday, so we got plenty of time for this to change before the event actually takes place. Now, I do want to take a quick look at temperatures this week, and we can see in Southern California, extending through Arizona, parts of New Mexico, and through much of the Central Plains, there's actually the potential for 60-degree weather across much of the country during the day Monday. And this area will expand into Tuesday, but there will be a battle between the warm air and the cold air as we get towards the middle part of the week. In fact, as we go from Monday into Tuesday, one thing you'll probably notice is that the cold air begins to dive out of Canada once again into places like Minnesota and Wisconsin as we get into Wednesday morning. And this will be a reinforcing shot of cold air before our system arrives late next week. Beyond Wednesday, we can see where the cold air continues to dive into the places like the mid-Atlantic. So eastern Missouri down into parts of Tennessee, northern North Carolina, will probably have sub-freezing temperatures Thursday morning. Now, as we get into Thursday afternoon, we can still see some very warm temperatures into places like Texas, into Louisiana and even eastward into Georgia, where we still have daytime highs in the 60s. But again, it's battling this cold air that's over the Midwest and the Northeast. So instead of seeing temperatures in the 50s and 60s like you were seeing a few days ago, probably forecast in your local area, we're now seeing temperatures in the 40s for daytime highs in Kentucky and Virginia. And over the Northeast, temperatures are staying below freezing from the Ohio Valley into New York State and much of Maine. Moving into Friday, we can see where cold air is still well entrenched over the mid Atlantic and Northeast. We even have single digits for overnight lows into Friday morning here over much of the Northeast, let's say in upstate New York, into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Now, one thing you'll notice as we move into Friday afternoon is the development of that low pressure system in eastern Texas. And we can really see it here as we get into, let's say, Saturday morning here over Louisiana. Now, again, moving forward from here, where does that low pressure system go? Does it go into the Ohio Valley? Or does it move off to the east, right? Perhaps off of the Carolina coast or the Delmarva Peninsula. And where it tracks will be very important, right, for that upcoming potential snowstorm. Well, guys, we'll leave it at that today. Of course, we got a couple of storm systems hitting the West Coast early this week. And then we got this potential Valentine's Day snowstorm developing at the end of next week. So we have a lot to look forward to, right? And perhaps a lot to prepare for. So, again, if you live in the Northeast in particular, just pay attention to that forecast as we get into that Thursday, Friday time frame. I'm sure your local forecasters will have a good idea of what's going to happen with the storm at that point. But if you like today's video, please like or subscribe. I will have a new video out on Wednesday, so stay tuned, and I'll see you then.